So, hello everyone. We've got a few people who are just still joining. We'll just make sure everyone's in. But hello everyone, welcome to this evening's event. My name is Emma Foodie and I'm the Co-op Party Assistant General Secretary. I'm really pleased to welcome you this evening to our Co-op Party Summer School. We've got a series of events over the summer to help you find out more about who we are, what we do, how you can get active, and what support we're able to give you to ensure that you get the most out of your membership as well. And tonight's Zoom is about being a party officer. And so just before I start, there's going to be a few things which I just want to point out. And first is that this Zoom call is being recorded. Many of our members can't access it live, so we like to make it available on YouTube so people can go back to it. But it does mean if you don't want your image to be seen for any reason, if you want to just turn your video off and keep on audio only, that's no problem, but now's the opportunity to do that. In addition to that, you'll have noticed that as everyone's been entered, they are muted, and that's just to make the content of the call a bit clearer. So only those who are speaking will have their sound enabled at the time. So tonight's going to involve myself and my colleague John Boyle, who are going to be talking about what it means to be a party officer, what it kind of involves in the broad sense, but there'll also be an opportunity for a question and answer session as well. So there's three ways that you can answer, that you can ask a question, whether you want to post that in the chat box and we can read it and come to it. You can raise your virtual hand on your Zoom, or alternatively, you can email it to events@party.coop. And finally, just before we get started, I do want to emphasise that the Co-op Party believes that our cooperative values should be reflected in our actions as well as our policies. So we want all of our members and all of our event participants to feel safe, to feel welcome and respected. So please ensure that you abide by this when you're making contributions today. I'm sure you will, and I look forward to hearing them. But now we get to hear a bit from John. John's worked for the Co-op Party for a number of years. I'll allow him to share that. But we're really lucky to have him. He's got a phenomenal amount of experience, not just working for the party, but within the broader co-op movement. You know, if there's anything worth knowing, he's always the person to go to on these things. So he's got a tremendous amount of experience, and we're delighted to have him here. So, John, I'll hand over to you at this point. Do you just want to chat a little bit about what it's like to be a party officer?
Yes, yeah, thanks, and welcome everybody, and thanks for that, Emma. One of the things about me is that if I don't know the answer to a co-op thing, I do know a person who does. So I tend to rely on quite a network of very nice people. I have been working for the party for about 8, 9 years now, but before that, I'm still an officer, local officer, been on the party council for a long time. Actually, I'm not even going to admit how long, and have held almost all the positions at officer level, branch and party council and region even. And really, one of the things that I want to sort of try and get across is that the job of a party officer can seem complicated, but it's more often than not, it only has a few actual specific roles. And the first and most important is for you to enjoy it, because if you enjoy being a party officer, that will come across to the membership that you're looking after. Our main role really is to make sure that our branch or our party council is working effectively so that our members can actually engage with the party, but more importantly, engage with the outside world to promote the cooperative party, its values and principles, and obviously to try and get as many party members elected as possible. So I'd always start with that, and then look at the individual jobs that people have to do. I think one of the things that I tend to do is most party officers become party officer at the AGM, and the AGM tends to be the place that people are elected. Or they're volunteered, or especially if they're young, they tend to walk into the room and the rest of the room immediately says, "You're going to be our youth officer." I would strongly urge our party officers not to do that, and to actually allow new members and young members to actually sit in the meeting and a few meetings for a while. And I suppose the start off that is never force somebody to become an officer. It should always be voluntary. And whilst in a way that sounds slightly flippant, it does happen. And I would always encourage our existing officers not to grab the person just as they walk through the door. So if you are elected at an AGM, the likelihood is you're going to be elected to the 3 key posts in a branch or party council: secretary, chair, and treasurer. Now there are a number of other posts, but I'll perhaps take questions really about those, because they can vary from branch and party council. The secretary looks after the meeting in the sense that they help to call the meeting. They make sure that everyone's got an agenda or papers that are necessary for the meeting. And they also report from the party things that are going on. So it can either be things that the branch itself is asked to happen, or it can be things that the party nationally are asking the branch or the party council to engage with. So you're really very much an information sharer and an information gatherer. There are some very specific and particular things that you'll need to do. But again, I would always urge you to have a look at our website, have a look at the branch and officer advice that you get. We send a sort of an online magazine. It's called The Buzz now, and that will keep you up to date with things that we want to ask you to ask your members to do locally. But also it contains a lot of support and advice. And most importantly, it also contains access to the rules. The secretary should always use the rules for their benefit. They are a support. They may look a bit complicated at first, but once you've read them or looked at them a couple of times, you'll be able to pick out the things that are very helpful to your role. Now, the chair, very similar, except your work is largely done in the meeting itself. Your job really is to look after the members in the meeting, to make sure that the meeting is successful and enjoyable, and that members have the opportunity to have a say. You'll be guided by your secretary, who you should always try and work with in tandem as to any of the matters that have to be discussed at the meeting, or debates or policy debates and that kind of thing. But the best chairs are the chairs that don't speak much. Now, that's why I'm rarely a chair. But in a way, your job is to make sure that everybody else has their say. There will be times when you'll have to perhaps calm people down or ask them not to dominate the meeting. But we do have a set of guidelines and a set of sort of good practice that we encourage the chair to be fully aware of, and also to let the meeting know. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, when we've had branches, when I've had to visit branches where there's been difficulties, often just reading out those guidelines has helped enormously, because they're based on our values and principles, and that's what everyone who's joined the Co-op Party has joined the Co-op Party for. So never be afraid to get them out now and again, and just remind members of those guidelines and the values and principles. The other main job is the Treasurer's job. Now, the Treasurer's job is relatively easy to describe, but I would be the first to admit that it can have a small amount of hard work for a short period, and then you can put your feet up. Your job is really to look after the money that the branch or the party council receives or collects if it does events and activities. And you will also be needing to report to the party how much money you've got, basically. Now, that makes it sound really simple. We have guides to keeping accounts, and we have a template account sheet that we've trialed actually quite successfully. We've had a lot of officers now use it, and it has been well received. The only time when you might have to do a bit of extra work is at the AGM, when you'll need to produce the annual accounts. But But again, you can get in touch with myself or one of the other national organisers for help with that, and we'll talk you through that. I'm going to shut up now because I could go on and on and on, which I'm famous for, or infamous. But I'd really rather take questions and see who's on the call and which jobs you're either already being placed in or volunteered for, or which jobs you're interested in.
Thanks so much for that, John. That was really helpful, and I think it just gave a really good overview of kind of the different, or rather the core officer roles that we have at a branch level. I think it's important to say is that, you know, if you do want to get into kind of the real details and the nitty-gritty of what those jobs involve, we're absolutely more than happy to spend time going through that with you, whether it's on a more individual basis or in a smaller group. What we wanted to do today is kind of cover the broader principles as to what they involve, so people can get a bit more of a flavour. And of course, if you've got any specific questions, you can ask those today. The only thing that I think I would probably add on to what John said already is that the officer team is really the welcoming team for new members. Is that it's as well as the kind of really core administration of, you know, just making sure that the branch ticks over in the way that it should. It's the branch officers who really set the tone for new members when they come into the party, and for people's experience of the party in that way. It is the front door really as to the experiences that members will have when they interact with the party. And so as an officer, you really get to set the tone as to being a welcoming one, being an inclusive one, where people are encouraged to participate and to share their experience and to get involved in the party in different ways. And I think that it's really important to make sure that those kind of branch positions were able to be really externally focused in the meetings, in the activity that we have at a branch level. Because ultimately, you know, no one joins the party to discuss the minutes from the previous meeting. They join it to talk about, you know, how can we put our cooperative values in action? How can we get people elected? How can we get involved in campaigns? How can we shape policy? And I think branch officers are really uniquely placed at making sure that that's the kind of party that we have at that level. And then the other thing which I just mentioned, which John touched on as well, is that we do have a real wealth of resources available online, whether it's, you know, descriptions of the roles that we have and kind of more detail as to what they involve on a kind of on a more kind of granular level, whether it's guidance as to what meetings look like and what they should look like to make them participatory and to make them engaging. All of these types of things are available on our website. And we're more than happy to also share them with you directly after this call today, so that you've got that access readily available at your fingertips. But hopefully, John and I have given you a little bit of a flavour of what the role is like. We want it to be informal. We want this to be a discussion rather than us just, you know, talking for half an hour, 40 minutes, or whatever it may be. So we'll go to questions now, because I can see that someone's already got their hand up. So Tim, do you want to come in with your question?
Emma, thank you. Emma, John, a question. I'm up in County Durham and a fairly new member of the party, also a Labour Party member. Question is that we're going to have two new branches here, one covering the 5 Tees Valley authorities, that's Middlesbrough, Stockton, Darlington, Redcar and Cleveland and Hartlepool, and then the whole of County Durham. So the question is, guys, is in terms of branches, new branches, is there a designated posts beyond chair, secretary and so on? What's the pattern across branches on the whole? Because I'm thinking about putting myself forward, but I'd like to know about the breadth of posts that there may or may not be. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'll bring John in at this point, because I know he was going to talk about some of the different kind of roles, as you say, that aren't necessarily requirements. But as you say, people have kind of have in place because it's something that's helpful on a more kind of ad hoc and local basis. So John?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And actually, really useful question, because we do have in our rules suggestions for officers, and they're all really, well, I'll list them. For the branch, it's campaigns officer, education officer, cooperative liaison officer, that's my favourite, youth officer and equality officer. But I have to say, added to that, if the branch, and this applies to party councillors as well, feels that there is a role for the party to play, and I'm struggling to actually think of one, but that they feel that an officer, a volunteer officer, could actually pick up and take and then report to the party. We're very sort of flexible in that respect. I will think of one in a minute, but just to go back to those main ones, the campaigns officer very much about some of the campaigns that we're currently doing. So that officer would be encouraging the rest of the branch to engage, whether it be the modern slavery campaign, whether it be our high streets, our more recent high streets campaign, or again, one that I'm particularly interested in is the stopping violence against staff in the retail stores. So then that would be quite specific, because they would then try to encourage the members locally to engage in that. Now, I've seen someone just put in, what about BAME? The equality officer at the branch level could well cover that, not just BAME, but all of our other networks. And that role would really be probably largely about trying to getting our members to engage with the various networks that the party has actually set up in the last sort of year or so. We've got BAME, LGBT, disability, youth, and women's network. Did I say all 5? Do you know, every time I read that list out, I always go, I'm sure I missed one. And certainly the equality officer could try to promote and encourage the rest of the members in the branch, and in fact, frankly, even at party council level, to deal with. So it really, the job itself almost describes, the name of the officer role almost describes what we'll be expecting. I mentioned cooperative liaison officer, and that is a particular favourite of mine. Another name for that could be Principle 6. Principle 6, part of the values and principles, is cooperation amongst cooperatives. So we would encourage that officer to actually find out about other co-ops in the area of the branch. Now, I know County Durham extremely well, being born in Sunderland, when it was still part of County Durham. But I know that there are a lot of co-ops in the County Durham area, and what we would be trying to do is to look at how could we connect with those. Now, the positive thing about that, and this brings back to what Emma was saying earlier, this is where our members can become engaged, because when you find out about some of the co-ops, those cooperatives may actually be beneficial to some of our elected representatives. So when we've got local councillors that are looking for ways to improve services to their constituents, they could actually be put in connection with those co-ops and actually benefit from that connection. So that's just one of the reasons.
That's really helpful. Thank you for that question, Tim, and thank you for that answer. John, we've had a little flurry of questions come through in the chat, and so I'll pose them to you if that's okay, and then I'll chip in here there on things if that's okay. That come directly. So the first question that I've got is we've talked about branch activity and having an outward-facing branch. What kind of activity would you expect for a well-functioning branch to get up to? Well,
I particularly like not calling meetings, but calling them events. So, you know, an active branch, and I'm going to go to one not too far away from here. I live in Stafford now, and sadly I don't no longer live in the northeast. There's a branch called High Peaks, and they have done some fantastic events where they've gone out into the community. For instance, actually, they supported a local co-op store that was threatened with closure, and they ran a little campaign to make sure that that stayed open. They also engage with environmental affairs. Being in a place called High Peaks, I'm sure you can imagine it's smack in the middle of nowhere. So it's about being engaged with the local community, but for good reason, things that the local community themselves are interested in. And what they've done is they've built up a wealth of knowledge. I've got Phil there in full glowing view all of a sudden. Phil, do you want to turn your microphone off. I think you might be unmuted. That's thrown me. So it's really about doing events and activities, and then the members being engaged by deciding and determining what policy subjects that you might want to talk about, or what other areas that you might want to talk about. And I have to say as well, a good Co-op Party branch is also engaged with its local Labour Party, or I should say local Labour parties, because more often than not, we cover several CLPs. So our members going to CLPs and telling them about cooperation, and sharing our values and principles, and explaining the way that the Cooperative Party works is another way of being active. And of course, it often leads to recruiting new members as well. So there's a range of things, but the members have always got to be driving it. They're the ones that will be making suggestions for subject areas for them to cover.
I just agree with that, and I think it's coming back around to that point as well, isn't it? Is that if we're having a meeting for meeting's sake, then we're kind of missing the point. You know, if we're getting people together, if they're taking time out of their evenings, their weekends, their lives, then there should be a purpose to that. And that might be having the opportunity to just have a policy discussion about, you know, what would we, you know, about high street social care, something like that. It might be about talking about some campaign that the national party's running, or indeed that the local party wants to get on with, or that they might want to do in conjunction with the Labour Party. It might be having a speaker from the movement to come and to share their experiences at the moment. It might be to another speaker would be to have, you know, a Labour and Co-op representative. I mean, one of the big benefits of everything being online now is that it's much easier for someone to, you know, it might be that you're in the deepest, darkest corner of a true blue territory, and previously it's been really difficult to get someone to come along and share what they've been up to in Westminster, or what they've been up to and driving forward in local government elsewhere in the country. And by being online, we've suddenly got access to everyone's living rooms, basically, which means that we can get speakers so much more, is so much easier. And similarly, if there's speakers that you'd like from the staff team, we'll be more than happy to come along, whether it's one of our organisers, whether it's our equalities officer, our policy officer. You know, these are all people who are ready and willing and keen to come along and to hear from members. And so I think that there's lots of ways that we can make these activities engaging. I can see we've got another hand up, so I'll come to the hand up before I go to any of the other submitted questions. So Zach, do you want to bring yourself off mute and ask the question?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, loud and clear. Awesome,
thanks. Yeah, so I'm quite a new member. I've only really been with the party for maybe 3 months or so. But those of us in South Essex will actually be having our AGM this weekend over Zoom. So this event was particularly valuable to me. Yeah, I'm only like 17, and I'm naturally quite interested in the youth wing. So I'd like to know like a little bit more about that, like that position, that officer position, and you know what would go into holding that position and things like that, if that's okay.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. I can see John was about to speak, so I'll let him speak first, and then I'll add to the double act.
Well, Zach, welcome first and foremost, and thank you for you know, saying that you want to volunteer. If you heard me at the beginning, I do always worry about our younger members, the new younger members. They often get grabbed when they walk through. Well, this will be a virtual door rather than the real door. But it's great that you're actually interested in becoming a youth officer. Quite simply, that particular role is actually trying to work with the rest of the youth members. Now, I know Essex, our branches in Essex, they're quite small in terms of numbers, and although I haven't looked at the list of youth members recently, I suspect that there will only be a handful. However, in the region that you're in, the East of England region, there'll be a much larger number. And what what you could do is, first and foremost, the branch, well, I'd like to think that they will elect you, but as long as you're, you're elected the youth officer, you would try and engage with the younger members in that branch. But also, I would be making sure that the party council officers made sure that you were in touch with the rest of the youth members in the whole of your party council area, which is a significant part of Essex and a bit of, forgive me, my geography is always pants, but I think it's Suffolk and a bit more of the east of England. And then you would actually be able to suggest events and activities, the things that Emma's just been talking about. You could, again, hold a meeting just exclusively for young members. You could invite people and we would help to get you speakers. And I also think that you could, hold events and activities. You would have to look for the funding from either your branch or party council. Before COVID, we used to go out, and forgive me, I should have, when we were talking about Durham, I should have mentioned that the Durham branch always had a stall at the Durham Miners Gala or Gala. I always have an argument with my friends about that pronunciation. But we also, down south, we used to go to the Tolpuddle Martyrs. And I do know that there are some very historic social events dotted around the east of England and the southeast. And where we set up stalls, we advertise and promote the Co-op Party. Brilliant thing about that is you're not only engaged with people and chatting to them about the party, but you're finding out about the community and what their concerns are. That then helps enables us to talk to our politicians. So it's a lovely virtuous circle. So the sky's the limit in a sense, other than perhaps the budget, for what you want to do with the rest of your younger colleagues and younger members. And then, by the way, just to throw the cherry on the top, you could also ask to be delegated to events and activities. So perhaps delegated to go to conference or delegated to go to a cooperative event to learn about more about cooperation. So there's a range of things. There's as little or as much as you would want to ask for.
I think that's a really, really good summary, John. And again, just to say welcome. We're absolutely delighted to have you join the party and that you've taken the decision to become a Co-op Party member. But absolutely, as John said, is your role as youth officer would be to welcome, to make sure that your other young members felt welcome, to make sure that to work with the other branch officers to ensure that the activity that went on in the branch is accessible and interesting and relevant to young members, and perhaps as John said is doing some particular stuff perhaps on separately almost from the branch itself and doing particular youth events and things like that. We do also have a youth network on a national level, which there'll be the opportunity to get involved with as a youth committee with delegates from different regions who similarly seek to engage young members on a national level and to get them involved. So there should be plenty of opportunities for you to engage and to be able to participate, whether that's as a member, whether that's as a youth officer. But really delighted to hear that you're so keen to get involved so quickly in the Parties Act. So really pleased to hear that and welcome. Just in terms of questions, so we've had a couple more come through. So the next one that I've got for you, John, is with regards to officers, is there a gender requirement akin to the Labour Party in terms of gender balance?
There is. Our rules have been changed, arguably you could say not before time, but if I just get my PowerPoint, I can remind myself of the specific ones. Basically, we do have a gender balance, and we do insist that an officer post, for instance, just at the branch and or party council level, that there is an even split between men and women. We also will leave posts vacant if they're not filled, and I know that sometimes can cause consternation amongst members. But we really are insisting on getting gender balance. I think we're in a better place than we used to be, and certainly the wider cooperative movement, as well as the Co-op Party, is streets ahead of the rest of the economy, if I can put it like that. the incidence of members, women members, being in the majority on the boards of several co-ops, on the National Membership Council of the cooperative group, and increasingly more and more of our branches and party councils. The specific rules, I'm embarrassed to say they're the longest set of our rules, and I'm not going to read them all out. They are available online. The great thing is we have the easily the best website address. It's party.coop. I mean, you really can't, get simpler than that. If you go in there and you go right to the bottom of the page, you'll see a line there which just simply says party rules, and you can open those up. But as I say, it would take me longer than the time I'm now talking to read out the rules about gender balance. But we do make sure that they're adhered to.
Absolutely, thank you. I think the party puts a great deal of importance on the party reflecting the communities that we seek to serve, and so it's about making sure that we've got the opportunities to ensure those posts are filled by a diverse set of members. In addition, as I mentioned briefly in my answer to Zach's question, is outside of the branch there is other opportunities to get involved, whether it's the women's network, whether it's our LGBT network, etc. There are all kinds of events that are being put on in conferences so that people are able to express the membership in lots of different ways. So there's lots of opportunities to do that. And then just one more question that we've got in, but of course, if anyone else wants to ask anything, someone's come into the chat and is asking, is it okay to hold CLP officer roles and co-op roles at the same time? And if elected as a Labour councillor, is there a way at the end of the 4-year term to become a Labour and cooperative councillor?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. For my sins, I've held Stafford and Stone CLP secretary for a while. But yes, I mean, I wouldn't encourage it because actually both, CLP secretary is hard work. I think sort of if you're chair maybe or something like that, it's slightly less. I like things to be spread around. But the most important thing that you asked there was about becoming a Labour and co-op candidate. And we are encouraging our members, if they haven't already, to put their names forward. We're running candidacy schools, and we try and provide as much support as we can for people who are interested in standing as Labour and co-op, particularly explaining the rules, because there are some specific rules that the Labour Party has, as well as we do, to make sure that people can stand in that role. And frankly, the more that you learn from both parties, the better as well, because you'll be able to tell your Labour Party members about the Co-op Party and the way that it works. And by the way, it's not a one-way street. We want to know what the Labour Party is doing as well, so that we can support their campaigns. So it isn't ideal, but I wouldn't recommend it for a long time. And I'm being serious. That's quite a lot of nights when you'll be, well, probably on Zoom to start with, but hopefully when we all start meeting again.
Absolutely. So, but yes, in short, yes and yes. And if anyone on the call is currently a councillor and perhaps is a Labour councillor, but in the terms that they'd like to stand as a Labour and co-op councillor, that would be absolutely wonderful, and you're very welcome to come and be part of the team on that basis. As John mentioned, there is a candidate development programme for local government candidates, and there's some really good support which is available there to help candidates in their journey. And so we would really love to have you as part of that, and as part of spreading co-op values and bringing co-op answers and solutions to local government, which would be really positive. Another question which I've got, John, last one I think, is what kind of decisions take place at a branch level?
Oh, right. Well, they range from simply agreeing to have an event or an activity. I mean, it is important that, if somebody suggested that you all go down to the pub and have a drink, that's not really an activity. But believe me, in Stafford, we've because we hold our meetings in the County Officers Club, that's what we generally do. But in all seriousness, it's important that events and activities that are being suggested by the local party do actually enjoy the support of the members. So you do get to decide, you should get to decide. The more serious ones are that you do get to elect the officers. You also get to decide on policy debates. So you'll be encouraged to take part in policy debates and then send a submission into the party for it to become party policy. You will be involved in perhaps making decisions about organisational motions as well, which is about the way that the parties run. And then you get to vote for the delegates to go to the various places, not just the constituency Labour Party, but the local government committee, which I really must point out because it's been a relative change. We are entitled to 2 delegates on the local government committees, as they're now called. They were called the Local Campaign Forum for those that you know, want to know the difference. And also sending delegates off to the party council, which is at the next level above a branch, and they're responsible for looking after all the branches in an area. And then you might also, quite honestly, you might have a debate in your branch about a subject and about whether or not to do a campaign on, say, modern slavery, or, well, hopefully against modern slavery, and a whole host of things really that you are going to be involved. And to turn it the other way, you can also suggest things that you want the branch to do or to engage with or to support. So it can be a range of things.
Thank you for that. That was a really good summary of the different things that take place at a branch level. That was actually the last question which we've had submitted. So I will just give a bit of a kind of last call if anyone's got anything which they weren't sure whether they wanted to put forward. But perhaps, you know, now that there's the moment, you might want to come forward. No, well, I will take the. Oh, sorry, we do have one hand.
Louise. I think I know Louise.
Thank you. Thanks.
From me.
Thanks for inviting me. This is really lovely and it feels really positive. So thank you for that. As we were talking, it occurred to me that I recently had a conversation with a farmer near Brockton. I've said Brockton because I know John lives in Stafford too. And he was expressing his frustration at not being able to vote in the last election. And he was explaining to me the EU rules and how that was affecting farming, and that he was getting paid from the EU to not farm his fields. And Diana Smith has been giving me information about food strategies and the amount of food problems that are coming up in the future. And I just wondered if there might be somewhere constructive that I can put all this information.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, we do have a food strategy, and it hasn't been fully worked out because
I think it's in terms of Brexit and the changes and the problems that we're having. About.
I mean, it's worrying that the farmer said that he couldn't vote, but maybe he was saying he didn't know which way to vote. But I mean, what we can do, Louise, is we can bring it to our branch. You and I can. I'll make sure that Jack can. Sorry, this has almost become an internal little discussion here. Not everybody. We can get Jeff, it is, isn't it, who's the branch secretary now. We could certainly discuss it and then send off a paper to head office. Because even when we've got our big policy debates, we still take in suggestions of policy and also questions and queries. And then we try and get the relevant politician. So it would be the chap from Plymouth, forgive me. I don't know. Thank you, Luke Pollard. He's our shadow Labour and Co-op shadow minister.
The information that the farmer was giving me was really quite detailed. So, and I did get him to the point where he would agree to come to a CLP to share what he was thinking. Whether he would do that with the characters that are there, I don't know. But it might.
Yes.
It might be if some people who will listen would come with me to listen to what he has to say. I think would be
if we take that, so Louise, shall I get in touch and we'll look at that? But it is good that you've suggested that, because if people in other areas do get people, particularly in areas of work, areas of the economy, that are giving supportive, useful information that we can then pass on to our politicians, I think that's just a good thing. And then,
so if you or Diana might like to come with me, I can show you where this person lives.
I never mind coming out to Brockton. For those that don't know, it's right next to Cannock Chase, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah.
Lovely. Thanks so much, Louise, and thanks, John. Any other questions? Fantastic. Well, like I said, I assume that's just because we've been so comprehensive. There isn't any other questions. But
it's Emma, it's Wilhelmina. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I have had my hands up. Emma, I'm just wanting to know, first of all, I don't know why I'm on this course, why it was sent to me, but I'm so delighted. Welcome, Zach. Thank you, John. And thank you all for all the contributions. And Louise, if you listen to Farming Today in the morning as I do, Sado, you will know that we are in a lot of trouble with this Brexit and the farmers. You know, they're not moaners, they're not whiners, they do a very good job. So I hope that goes off well for you. Like I said, I don't know why I was sent this, because I used to be on the Area Consultative Forum. But what I would say is this: I am a member of the Cooperative Party and have been for a while. And what I've never quite understood as a Labour councillor of 10 years, why I couldn't do both. So somewhere along the line, we are not telling people like myself, well, you don't just have to stand as a Labour councillor. You could actually say Labour and Cooperative, or Cooperative and Labour, whichever way it goes. And I would be happy to do both. But I always was unclear as to whether there was a choice. So I'd like, if that could be sorted out, I'd be grateful.
Absolutely, and as I said, we're always keen to recruit more people to stand on a joint ticket where they're able to share our values. I think the challenge that we sometimes have, and not to get into kind of the granular detail of it, is where there's multi-member wards. If there are people within there who can't stand on a Labour co-op ticket because they're not members of the co-op party, then that applies to the entire number of Labour candidates within that ward. That's sometimes a one which ends up a bit of a sticky one for us. But let's, by all means, let's talk subsequently, because if we can persuade any co-councillors or co-candidates of yours, then we can definitely get you onto a Labour and co-op ticket there. So thank you for that, Wilhelmina.
Well, I've got a very fine MP. Well, it's not my MP, but Barry Gardner's my MP. But Gareth, and that's the branch I belong to, Brenton Harrow. And I just want to know if it's possible, because I believe in the co-op. I wouldn't be at this meeting, and I would not have been a member for so long if I didn't. But I just want to know, is there any way we could marry the two? Because I'm very proud to belong to both. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And one thing which I was going to say just now is that what we'll do is we'll circulate, following on from this meeting, to all of the attendees some of the information which we've talked about. So that will include the branch activity guide, a little bit of kind of what the branch officer roles involved, but it'll also include details of the candidate development programme. And if that's something that you yourselves are interested in being part of for when you're up for, so that you can stand for election, or whether it's something that you'd be willing to share with colleagues and comrades potentially from the Labour Party, then that's something we'd be very grateful of. As I said, we're always keen to have more people put forward our co-op values and message. I think I noticed a question which just asked about whether you can kind of become Labour and co-op mid-term. It is actually at the point of election. Now, just because you didn't stand on a Labour co-op ticket when you were elected, that doesn't mean that you can't be part of our networks, that you can't kind of be part of sharing our campaigns, bringing our motions forward, and support that's available. That's absolutely something that's open to you. But it does mean that just when people look at obviously what your party affiliation is on your council website or what have you, it'll just say the Labour Party. It wouldn't say Labour and Co-op Party, but you would be, for all intents and purposes, one of ours, which is always important. Wilhelmina, I can see you put your hand up again.
Emma, I've lowered it, but my system works like a teenager. It just does what it wants to do. It never follows me. So when I mute myself, it actually unmutes me and when I'm mute, it mutes me. So I just give up. But I have actually put my hand down.
No problem. Thank you.
Speaking of teenagers, sorry.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much to everyone who's made contributions today. I think it's been a really, really good discussion, and I hope it's given everyone a bit of a flavour for what it means to be a branch officer and kind of what it entails. As I mentioned at the beginning of the event, sorry, this is part of a series of events. We do have another one next week, which is about the relationship of the Co-op Party with the movement. It would be wonderful if you're able to make that. So do come along if it's something that interests you. It will be shared on social media. It's on our webpage and in emails and things like that. So you'll be able to sign up in that way. But just to say another thank you for everyone attending today for the contributions that were made. Take care and stay safe.
Bye everyone. Thank you.